Hi, the topic that we will be discussing in this class is a play by Harold Pinter called The Birthday Party. To begin with, we need to know a little bit about the author, about the playwright, and about the reasons and perhaps the methods which led him to write an incredible piece of drama like this. Harold Pinter is a British playwright, screenwriter, producer, actor with a career that has spanned over more than 50 years. He was born and brought up, completely raised in London, and he has won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2005. His first play was The Room, which came out in 1957, and this was followed by The Birthday Party in the very same year. Now, generally, Pinter's plays are categorized into two sections. The earliest plays written by him often come under the title of the Comedy of Menace, whereas the second category of plays which he wrote in his later years of life often come under the title of memory plays. Now, let's look at a little bit about what a comedy of menace is. A body of plays written by very famous playwrights such as David Campton, Nigel Dennis, N.F. Simpson, and Harold Pinter. The comedy of menace is actually a word play. It's a play on the comedy of manners, which also used to be a genre of playwriting that used to exist before. Now, in the comedy of menace, there is laughter. There is laughter from the side of the audience. But what makes it different from a comedy of manners is the fact that the situation of laughter is almost always followed by a feeling of some sort of impending sense of disaster that is going to strike. Something problematic is going to happen. The audience might laugh at what is happening on the screen then or on the stage then, but you know that something is wrong and something difficult, something disastrous, something unfortunate is going to happen after that. The audience is made aware of menace even in the middle of laughter. That is what makes the comedy of menace a wordplay on the comedy of manners, but what makes it very different and unique at the same time. And The Birthday Party is an excellent example for the comedy of menace. So the play that we're going to discuss now is a great example for the comedy of menace, which is a very interesting genre in itself. Now, the second set of plays that Pinter wrote were called the memory plays, which, as the name suggests, the lead character would narrate the events which happened in his, her, or their life. And that sort of gives a flashback into what happened before. And it's the recurring reminiscence of a memory. And that is why it is called a memory play. And it is almost always, of course, drawn from the memory of the character. The term was coined by Tennessee Williams, who very famously wrote The Glass Menagerie, which is an excellent example for what a memory play is supposed to be like. And Pinter's plays Old Times, No Man's Land, and Betrayal are some of the examples of memory plays from our writer, from our playwright, Harold Pinter. And in all of these plays, as is highlighted, memory becomes a very powerful weapon in the play. Moving on, this is a shot of Harold Pinter. This is our playwright, our author. Moving on to The Birthday Party, which came out in 1957. It is the second full-length play which was made by Harold Pinter, and it is perhaps one of his most commonly and most frequently performed plays ever. Now, it is classified, as I said before, as a comedy of menace, and many elements which we classically call as the Pinteresque elements, those characterizations about the way he constructs his play, which is very unique to the way Pinter often makes his plays, are very visible in The Birthday Party as well, which include ambiguous identities. Who is this person? The identity of an individual is not given to you as a prepared answer. Here we have person A, this is what he or she or they does or do, and this is what their life is like. That is not how characters are introduced to us at all. There are confusions of time and place. Time and place warp as one flows into the other, as you doubt, where am I right now? What time period or time place are we talking about right now? That also makes this play very interesting, and dark political symbolism, of course. Underlying all of these ambiguities, all of this vagueness and absurdity, or to an element of ambiguity that is created in, there is a deeper sense of symbolism, the meaning of which you can derive by yourself, because a lot of things are applicable in most of the things that he has kept open for the audience or for the reader to understand. And the play is set in a run-down boarding house in an English seaside town. Which seaside town are we talking about? Nothing has been mentioned, but we just know that the boarding house in the said play is not in a very good condition. It is run down. Not a lot of people are visiting the boarding house, and it talks about some of the ambiguous, interesting, confusing, chaotic events which happen in association with a birthday party that takes place in the same boarding house. And like I said, the event is a birthday party. The main event of the program. This is the first edition that was published, and it's the official cover of the first edition when the birthday party came out. Moving on, its first premiere was in 1958 on the 28th of April. And what is interesting is once the birthday party was premiered for an open audience, to a theatrical audience, it created a lot of confusion in the audience because they did not exactly understand what Pinter was trying to say. It was warmly received, but it was considered, interestingly, to be a theatrical failure back in the time. But by the time in 2008, by the time he died, by the time Harold Pinter passed away, his work had been recognized as one of the best plays ever to be written, especially when it comes to British drama and even in the world. And it is fascinating to discover that in Birthday Party, signs of Pinter's abiding obsessions can be reflected, like I said before, elements of the Pinteresque. And it looks like there is a certain deeper belief that Pinter had in political resistance, and that is what is effectively reflected in the Birthday Party as well. Moving on, like I said, the people were largely baffled by the play when it came out. What is Pinter trying to talk about exactly? What is the problem here? Or what is the topic that he's trying to discuss? What is this ambiguity? People were baffled. And like all Pinter's works, it had its origin in a very personal experience, which is this. Pinter recalled in the 1950s, he was a very young actor. He was traveling and acting and performing in various parts. And once he was part of a farcical play called A Horse. And at Eastbourne once, he was stuck in an attic, or he had decided to stay over the night in an attic. And in that attic with him was a person who claimed to be a concert pianist. And he was talking about the experiences that he had and the kind of obsessive disturbance that that particular person's landlady was causing to him. And that became very interesting to Pinter to listen to. And when Pinter asked the man why he stayed in that particular place with that particular woman, irrespective of the kind of annoying life circumstance that she was creating for him, the sentence that the concert pianist said in reply to this question was this: there's nowhere else to go. And it is from that single statement that Harold Pinter brought and built this, which later came to be known as the Birthday Party. Before we discuss the story of the play, or at least a brief summary of what the story of the Birthday Party is, I have noted down about 4 questions that would be incredible if you can come back to after you have finished reading the play or studying the narrative or discussing it in class or individually with yourself. These are 4 very reflective questions that you can try to come back to at the end of the play and try to answer them and find out what it exactly gave you through it. The first question is this: what is the play's reality? Is it different from ours? If yes, how? If no, why? How has Harold Pinter discussed the concept of reality or constructed the concept of reality throughout his play? Is this the way you understand reality? If it is different, how is it different? If it is not different, why isn't it different? You can come back to that. The second question is, what is the significance of the title, The Birthday Party? Why has Pinter named it The Birthday Party? Is there something deeper than what we might understand from the surface? Third question, can we see the characters we see in this play in real life? If you have found them, if you've seen them before, where have you seen them? Try to analyze what the similarities are. Are the circumstances which gave birth to such characters similar in both these situations? You can always think about it. And the last one is, what did the play make you feel? After you read the play, after you went through everything, what exactly did it make you feel? What is the emotion? What is the feeling? Or what is the intellectual stimulation that paved way to your understanding of the play, and what did it make you feel like? It's very interesting. It sounds very simple on surface, but it is a deeper question that you can ponder after you have gone through the narrative. Now, before we come to the thoughts in mind, Harold Pinter's Birthday Party, like I said, is a narrative which happens in a rundown boarding house in one of the seasides in England. Nothing is specified as to where this is. And you are introduced to a set of very, very interesting characters called Meg, P.T., Stanley Weber. We have 2 other characters called Goldberg and McCann, another character called Lulu, and a set of sub-background characters who are not that important to the narrative or who don't actually come into dialogue into the narrative. We are introduced to a woman called Meg and her husband P.T. They are the ones who run this boarding house. Meg believes that she is a very busy woman, that her boarding house is one of the best that people constantly ask for when they come here. But the reality, in fact, is very different because nobody wants to come to this boarding house. It's run down, it's broken down, nobody's happy living here, and basically, Meg and PT have no business. PT is, of course, working as a deck chair assistant who takes care of the chairs and the people who come to the seaside, and he's responsible there. But he knows what the condition of life is exactly over here as well. And into the life of this husband and wife, a while back, entered a character whose name is Stanley Weber. And it is around Stanley that the entire ambiguity of the play is built into it. And once, two people called Goldberg and McCann, we don't know where they're coming from, we don't know what ideology they support, you don't know which institution they belong to, but they come to stay and take a break. That is what they say as they come to stay here. But soon we realize that the person that they're actually after is Stanley Weber, and they take Stanley Weber with them at the end of the play. And in between their arrival and as they leave the place is the function of a birthday party, which happens in the evening. And during that evening, a lot of very chaotic, very confusing, very ambiguous events take place. The first ambiguity is Stanley Weber believes that it is not his birthday, but Meg wants to have a birthday party for Stanley at that night, and Goldberg and McCann support the idea. Stanley is afraid of Goldberg and McCann, but he does not pretend as if he knows them. But somewhere the audience is given a sense of menace where you understand, no, there is something more than what we understand. And as Stanley Weber is forcibly taken away by Goldberg and McCann, we have a very baffled, a very frustrated, a very sad PT trying to get Stanley back, but he realizes that he can't do it. And Meg is very far away from reality as well. It is difficult to give a ABC point of view of what the plot of Birthday Party is like, because it is a chaotic compilation of a series of events and a series of people, and the way we make sense of meaning in that is by understanding that there is no fixed meaning that you're supposed to derive from the play in itself. Here are a few thoughts that you can keep in mind, which will help you to understand some of the symbolic basis on which Pinter may have discussed his narrative or may have constructed his narrative. The first one is, how does this play treat the nature of humankind? Through the characters such as Stanley, Meg, P.T., Goldberg, McCann, Lulu, etc., we are given a myriad set of examples of people whose characters are very different from each other. But what unifies them is a lack of built-in meaning that they are deriving from life. They seem to be okay with a lot of things that we as audience members might question. Why is this okay for them? But this again makes us question a lot of other things, as I've mentioned here. The second one is Goldberg and McCann are representatives. You know that for sure. They are perhaps representatives of a dire political ideology or a political party or a difficult political situation. But what exactly is it? Pinter does not answer. And he does not intend to give you an answer because his intention is to make you think. The third question, the helplessness that Stanley Weber faces is the helplessness that humankind can sometimes face in the face of organized power. When political power or organized institutionalized power decides the way you must live your life, decides the way you must think, decides what you should see, what you should eat, what you should feel, what you should understand, it choreographs an entire life for you. And humanity, no matter how much the race tries to make itself believe that we are under control, sometimes realize that our choices are not really choices. And that is the kind of helplessness that the character Stanley Weber sort of tries to communicate to you through him. The idea of absurdity. And the play might seem absurd to you, but mostly the reason why this play seems so absurd is because society has a certain fixed way of understanding what reality means, and it is delivered to you as if on a plate. But when a situation which questions that understanding of reality is presented to you, you may question it as absurd, but if you look at it, you understand maybe reality is shaped by society, and anything that slightly moves away from that path might seem absurd or might seem pointless to you. And that sort of makes you question the entire concept of absurdity again. And it will want you to go back to this play to understand maybe I should not have such a fixed idea about what reality should be, and probably try to understand it from Pinter's perspective as well. The second one is existentialism. The meaning of life is communicated in this play by showing that there is a lack of meaning. Meaning is defined by showing that there is a lack of it in this play. And the characters in the play also are not people who are intended on creating meaning in their lives. They are not people who live their day-to-day lives thinking, okay, I should make this meaningful, I should make this effective, I should give meaning to my life. That is not how these characters live their lives at all. And that is very interesting. Then you have capitalism. Maybe that is what Goldberg and McCann represent. Maybe. They're all maybes. They help you to sort of question what are the possibilities or possible answers for these equations that Harold Pinter sort of open up. So it can be capitalism. Stanley seems to have fallen prey to the clutches of the capitalistic society represented by characters like Goldberg and McCann. And there are also two faceless characters called Dermo and Monty, whose names are mentioned commonly by all of these people, but still, who is it? That answer is not given to us at all. And finally, P.T. is the representative of a helpless man, a man who knows that what is happening is wrong, but cannot exactly do anything about it. As P.T. tries to save Stanley at the very end of the play, Goldberg and McCann sort of taunts him, asking, do you have the power to come and rescue him? Then come and rescue him. But P.T. knows that he cannot do it because he does not have the power to do that. And that is also a way of reflecting the kind of helplessness that, human beings generally face in the phase of organized, institutionalized power, which could be social, political, or cultural, or an amalgamation of all of these, because they are deeply interconnected with each other. So this is a brief understanding of the play Harold Pinter's Birthday Party. The focus of this narrative was not on what the story is or what happens in the play, which is of course open to the interpretation of the reader, but the intention of this lesson was to give you a few points which you can use as tools of analysis to come back and probably see it in a light that is very different from what you as a reader may have approached it in a first step. And I hope these points will help you to see the play, to approach Pinter's Birthday Party in a very different or probably a more braver manner, because Harold Pinter questioned what meaning is. So let's do the same by reading what he has to write about. Thank you.